I was saying to Lawrence, I never need a mic because I'm very loud, but apparently I'm supposed to use this because if I don't, it doesn't get recorded. So I don't generally love using mics, so you'll have to bear with me here. Thank you for coming. Thank you for having me in the UK. I'm honored to be here. It's my second trip to the UK and I love it here. Um, Again, my name is Krista Hiddema. I do have the opportunity to serve as the Chief Philanthropy Officer for Vegan Grants. So, what I was hoping to do in this time we have together is to share with you a little bit about how we make funding decisions at Vegan Grants, who we are, what we look for, and the process of getting funding from us. I think that'll take maybe 20, 25 minutes tops. And then I wanted to really spend a good amount of time answering any questions you have at all about our funding or funding in the movement, period. You can ask me about farm animal funders, you can ask about other funders. I will try to be as transparent as I possibly can with you about funding in this movement. I spent the first 6 years of my life in this movement as the vice president of Mercy for Animals in Canada. I started the Canadian operation and I spent those years as a fundraiser. So I deeply know what it's like to be out looking for money. And I know that it can sometimes be a little bit confusing. And we don't always, as funders, make it as clear as we ideally should about how to get funding from this movement. So, once again, just for those of you that walked in, I'm going to share for the first little bit about our funding at Vegan Grants, and then I'll answer any question about funding, period. So, I hope that works for everybody. And again, please just jump in. You know, you certainly can raise your hand, but you most certainly do not need to. Just feel free to jump in with any comments or questions. So this is our team at Vegan Grants. Um, Top left-hand corner are Satish and Jay Karandikar. So that's Jay, that is not Satish. And they are basically our funders. So they are the ones that we are so lucky to have as deeply generous funders in this movement, and they have been funding in this movement for several decades. I then have the opportunity to oversee the team and to be involved in all of the final funding decisions. And I'm going to share with you exactly how we make those decisions as well. Also working on our behalf is Charlene Shaw. He is our Director of Finance and Operations. So whenever we make a funding decision, Charlene is the person that manages all of our money for us. I want to just take a moment for those that just joined. Thank you for being here. And I'm going to just spend the first little bit of this talk sharing with you information about our organization at Vegan Grants. And then I'm going to open it up and answer any questions at all about the funding landscape in our movement. So Satish and Jay, myself and Charlene. Charlene's wife, Shilpi Shaw, she is a CPA in the United States. And we're lucky to have an in-house accountant who manages all of our tax filings and all those good things that have to happen at a foundation. And Charlene and Shilpi also founded a farm animal sanctuary in Colorado called Loving Arms. So they do that and they work with Vegan Grants as well. Lori Torgerson White is one of our philanthropy officers. She and I had the opportunity to work together at Mercy for Animals about 10, 11, maybe 12 years ago. She went on to Farm Sanctuary and now she's working with me on the funding side. Then we have Kyle, who is our AI and automation specialist. I think some of you know and have worked with Kyle. He is a brilliant AI strategist, and he really assists us in ensuring that we are as effective as we possibly can be in working with all of our grantees. And then we have Kelly. Kelly is our social media analyst. She formerly did all the social media for Edgar's Mission out of Australia. And every time a grantee applies for funding, the very first thing that happens is Kelly does an assessment of their social media for me. I am not a social media guru at all. I'm kind of the opposite of that. So luckily, Kelly is there to help us look at how impactful your social media is, because it is a huge part of our decision making. So that's our team. And any questions so far? Okay. So this is our mission at Vegan Grants. And I'm going to just talk about it for a minute because we very much live our mission every single day. As the funding decision makers, Satish and Jay and I talk about our mission literally on every single phone call. So whenever we look at a grant application, we look at three things. So you'll see where I've underlined it. The first thing we look at is whether you are reaching a mainstream or influential audience. So the word mainstream, I think, is pretty obvious. Influential might be, you might be a physician and you might be then speaking with your patients about the importance of a plant-based diet. That's an example of an influential audience. The second thing we look at Vegan Grants is whether the advocacy is about veganism. So we don't fund things that are welfare oriented. We don't fund things, for instance, that is around strategic litigation. We are very, very specifically about vegan advocacy. And then the third thing that we look at when we look at every grant application is whether the work is cost effective. So this is a little bit tougher to consider. It's not always cut and dried, and we don't have a particular specific formula here. We do look at things much more contextually. We look at what country you're in. We look at what other work is being done in that country, what other groups are in that country. We do look at the extent of your reach. As I mentioned, we might look at your social media reach, and we might look at other considerations that help us to determine how you're able to connect with as many people as possible. So this is our mission that very much guides every element of our decision making. And once again, we talk about these three things all day, every day. I think sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm rhyming that off in my head. The next thing I wanted to explain for a moment, and I'm using an umbrella analogy here. People have asked me what exactly is Vegan Grants. And I like to think about Vegan Grants as a beautiful, colorful umbrella. So what I mean by that is that Vegan Grants is not a legal entity in and of itself. It's kind of like a marketing brand. It's a nice name, and it's a nice explanation of who we are and what we do. If you were to get funding from us, it is going to come from one of our actual foundations. It might come, for instance, from the Karuna Foundation, or it might come from one of our other foundations. So if you were to actually get money, the money is not going to come to you from Vegan Grants, because again, Vegan Grants is this nice marketing umbrella where underneath it are various foundations that we run. So as a grantee, it sort of doesn't matter to you where the money comes from, but it's going to come from a different name. That's kind of all you really need to know. Okay. The next thing I wanted to mention is that we're a little bit unique as a funder in that we will fund both individual activists and organizations. So some funders will only fund organizations. Well, we'll do both. So there might be somebody who's a social media influencer, who's an individual, and we might fund that person. There might be somebody who's an artist, and we'll fund that person. So we have the ability to do both. At an organizational level, we can fund anywhere in the world. And we're very lucky that Charlene and Shilpi, who manage our finances, are able to literally send money anywhere. Again, there are sometimes funders who might focus in on one or another particular geographic area. We'll pretty much be able to send money anywhere, so you don't need to worry about any restrictions that way. I think I've sort of already just covered this, that we will fund all over the world. Our focus, though, really is on farmed animals. It is on food. Again, it is on veganism. It doesn't mean that we don't think that other areas of animal exploitation are not important. We certainly think, vivisection is horrendous, and fur, all of those areas of animal exploitation, I think we all agree are absolutely atrocious. But our focus at Vegan Grants is specifically in connection with food animals. The other thing that we do is we do both what we call direct grants and indirect grants. So I wanted to talk a minute about the difference between them. The first type of grants are pretty easy to understand. Those are just the direct grants. And I wanted to share with you the process for getting grants from Vegan Grants. The first step in our process is our pre-application. So if you go to our main website, which is simply vgrants.org, and you go to the page about grants, you're going to find a pre-application button. The reason that we go through a pre-application is that we want to ensure that we are somewhat mission aligned before we ask you to go through the process of completing a full grant application. We understand that filling out a grant application can take a little bit of time, and we don't want to waste your time if we don't think this is a right match. So we ask you to fill out a very simple pre-application. We then take a look at that pre-application. If we think that you're a match for us, then we send you an invitation to apply. If we don't think that you're a match for us, we will send you an email and we'll explain to you why. Okay? Then we have something that we call our new grantee registration. So you have to become part of our system in order to fill out a complete grant application. So we need some pretty basic information from you, and it takes maybe 2 to 5 minutes to fill that out, and it gives you a grantee ID number. It's about a 5-digit number. That grantee ID number will live with you for always. That is your number, and it's how we track everything to do with you and the funding that we give you now and hopefully into the future. I just realized that I had a slide for each of these steps. So I forgot Kyle did that for me. So this is what the pre-application looks like, by the way, if you're on the website. So it's just a couple of quick questions. Again, you're going to get the invitation to apply. This is the grantee enrollment. Again, you'll see it's just a couple of simple questions, particularly where you're located, etc. And then you will get the grant application. We have 2 streams of grant applications. So if you're an individual and you're applying for funding, the questions are a little bit different than if you're an organization. But the system will automatically put you into whichever stream of application is the appropriate one for you. Then we get notified. So basically, I get an automated email that says, Krista, you have a new grant application to review. Then I go in and review your grant application. Sometimes I'll send you an email requesting a Zoom meeting. It's, I would say 99% of meetings with grantees are over Zoom. Every once in a while, I get the opportunity to meet people in person, as I have here. And I had some meetings yesterday and this afternoon and tomorrow. It's always awesome to do that in person, but the majority of them are via Zoom. And then sometimes we might be even asking you for additional information. Say, hey, this part wasn't exactly clear. Can you send us a bit of information here or there? Then you'll get a notification from us as to, again, whether your grant was approved or whether it was denied. If it was approved, we're going to tell you what that amount is, and you will then be able to access your information in our system at all times through that grantee ID number that I mentioned. When you have that grantee ID number, you'll be able to see exactly how much money is being sent to you, exactly on what date. It literally gives you everything you need. And we have an FAQ system that's chatbot. That's a chatbot that Kyle built for us. So if you had any questions, you simply type it in, and all those questions are going to be answered for you as a grantee. The second kind of funding we do is what we call indirect funding. So this is where we provide funding to other granting organizations, and they then work with grantees. Sometimes that's called re-granting. And for us at Vegan Grants, we re-grant through a couple of different entities. One entity that we re-grant through is ProVeg, and we have a ProVeg person right here. So we give ProVeg a certain amount of money, and they then provide grants to individuals within our movement. Another example is Veg Trust, and Matthew's here. So that's another example of our re-granting. So giving funds to Veg Trust, who then fund other organizations. We also re-grant through an organization called the Sabina Fund, and they're specifically in Israel. We grant through the Culture and Animals Foundation, which is an organization that only funds artists and academics. And we re-grant through an organization called Animal Place. They're a US-based organization that works with dog and cat shelters, trying to get them to move to a vegan diet for themselves and for their animals. So once again, it's this idea of direct granting, where you're coming to us directly, and also indirect granting or re-granting. Once you are a grantee, this is really important for us, is you have something called a magic link. And it really is I like to think of it as very magical. And it has a number of things that are really important for us from a finance and tax perspective. So you use your magic link, you go into it, and this is what the screen looks like. And it tracks quite a number of things for you. The first thing is, if you have tasks that are due to us, this is where you see those tasks. So tasks can be a number of things. They can be uploading your annual financial statements. They can be updating your contact information. It can be sending us what we call acknowledgement letters. So every time you get a grant, you need to provide us an acknowledgement letter, and we need that for our taxes, right? So there's a number of things within your pending tasks that we ask that you check that on a periodic basis. The other tab that you can access through your magic link is our reports tab. This is where you will see what reports that you have that are due to us. They might be your annual impact report. It might also be a matching report. One of the things that we do quite a bit at Vegan Grants is give matching grants. So we like to encourage grantees to expand their repertoire of funders. So we might say to you, hey, we'll give you $1 for every dollar you raise elsewhere, up to a maximum of $20,000. So then you would let us know every time you got another grant, and then we would match it for you at that time. And this is where you would upload, again, these matching reports. The other thing you see with your magic link is your donations. So you will see every dollar we have ever given you and every dollar that is scheduled for you. You'll know exactly when you're going to receive it in your own bank account. You'll know the date. You'll know which entity it came from. You'll have a total of anything that's ever provided to you. So you have that at your at your fingertip at all times. So you never have to wonder when funding will be coming in. And then, as I already mentioned, there is an AI powered chatbot, and you can ask it anything at any time. This is the website. So it's vegangrants.org. That's where you'll be able to find the pre-application. I would encourage you as well is if you have people in the movement that you know could benefit from our funding, please send them the website. Please send them to our pre-application. We love to hear from people who are doing mission-aligned work, who need some financial support to do that work. So please feel free to share this, like I said, with anybody that you know doing this work. And the reality is we couldn't do this without you, right? The money that we have sitting in a bank account is not helping animals, just sitting there, right? We need you to be out there doing the amazing, brave work that you're doing, fighting for animals. And our job is to support you in doing that to the best of our ability. So we are here to give out money. This is what we are here to do. And we want to give it out. Otherwise, it's not helping animals. It's just sitting around. So thank you for being here. I never like to blather like this for too long, so it gets kind of boring, but I wanted to give you an overview of how we do what we do, how to access our funding, how you can have your friends access our funding. And really at this point, I just want to open up to any questions any of you have. You can ask me literally anything about our funding or any aspect of funding in the movement. I've been in around the block for a dozen years or so doing this. I do know most of the funders in our movement. I'm a member of what we call Farm Animal Funders, or FAF for short. And I've been a fundraiser. So like I said, I've done both sides of this, and I know how hard it can be to get money to support your important work. So I want to just literally answer any questions that you have about anything to do with money. Yeah, you, how's that?
Hi, I'm Isabel. I run a farm animal sanctuary. So I've rescued back in the day 53 sheep. So what I find is fundraising for farm animals is really, really tricky and challenging. A lot of these grants tend to be for specific projects. For example, I don't know if you were, but there's nothing I find that's for like running sanctuaries or projects within sanctuaries. Do you have any ideas about sort of, for example, farm animal sanctuaries and how they can go about, applying for these grants?
Yeah, thank you. So the question was around, for those of you that might not have heard, the question was around fundraising for farm animal sanctuaries. Have any of you heard of Esther the Wonder Pig? I was the founding president of that organization, and I ran it for 6 years, and funded the startup of the organization. I ran the fundraising for the Esther scanner that we bought, $650,000 CT scanner, and we raised $650,000 in 3 months. I know how hard fundraising is, and I will be very clear that it is even harder for sanctuaries. That's maybe not the answer you want to hear. I'm going to give you a bit more in a second, but it is really, really hard. So I teach fundraising, and I always it's hard to think of everything so quickly, but there are four main ways to get money for any organization, sanctuary or otherwise, right? One is foundations, right? We'll come back to that in a minute. So, like vegan grants and the other big funders in the movement, right? The second way we get money, of course, is individuals, right? In the farm animal, in the sanctuary space, I can share with you from personal experience that the vast majority of funding in the sanctuary space is individuals. It's getting as many of the people who will give you things like $10 a month and do it into perpetuity. So what we look for in the farmed animal space is what we call recognized revenue. So it's every single person giving you $10 a month, $20 a month. That tends to be how most sanctuaries end up funding themselves. I can tell you it's how we did it at Happily Ever Esther, and it's also how we funded the $650,000 scanner. Was we had thousands of people who gave very small amounts of money. And I think sometimes in our movement, we forget how important $5 a month donors are. Five plus five plus five plus five, that really is a huge way to get money. The third way we get money is sometimes, if we're lucky, partnerships with businesses, right? Not always possible, but it's the third way we get money. And the fourth way we get money, not always possible, is in certain cases government, right? I know lots of European NGOs in countries like Denmark and Poland have gotten big money from governments for various grants. I will say to you, I don't know a lot of big funders, that first category of the four. I don't know a lot of big funders that support sanctuaries. And I know that that's not what you want to hear from me, but I don't know a lot of them. Right. It's hard. Like what we fund at Vegan Grants as it relates to sanctuaries is we fund the work that you do around vegan activism. So we might fund a particular program. The other thing I would say about big funders, generally speaking, if there is a funder that you're hoping to work with or you're hoping to get funding from, and you don't currently have a relationship with them, it is always best to begin the relationship by asking for funding for one reasonable sized program or project. Yes, there are lots of funders who give general operating costs, but when a funder is giving you general operating, it's because they've gotten to know you first. Most big funders don't just give money for general operating. It's, hey, I want to do this one project. Here's what I think it can do. It's going to be this amount of money. So that might be a way for you is looking at a particular discrete project, having it a reasonable sum of money, showing what you were able to do with it, and building relationships. Literally nothing replaces human to human contact. I don't care how many Zooms and AI and everything else we do, nothing replaces human to human. And when you have a funder, you cultivate them. You spend time and you connect with them and you show them what you're doing and get them excited about what you've done. Sheep are awesome. Goats and sheep are like two of my favorite. I know I'm not supposed to say that, but I freaking love goats and sheep, like you can do some cool things. So start with a project, but don't forget those $5 and $10 a month donors. We funded the entire sanctuary like that. We funded a scanner in 3 months. Do you know that the average donation for the $650,000 CT scanner was $47? That was the average donation. Like, don't poo-poo $5 a month, because if somebody's giving you $5 a month, they can probably do 10, and then they can probably do 25, and then they might do 100, right? $5 a month is gold because they're interested in your mission. And remember, think of fundraising, it's more than money. When you're fundraising, what else are we doing? We're marketing, right? I always think of my job is I'm a marketing representative for farmed animals. That's what I do. That's it. So when we are communicating with a $5 a month donor, they're already connected a bit to what we're doing. So keep marketing to them. Maybe they're even loving your sheep photos and they're not vegan yet, right? Keep marketing to them. So think of fundraising as more than money, because it is more than money. You've got, what do you got when you have somebody gives you $5 a month? You have an email address. Super gold, right? Then you have marketing campaigns and you are connecting them to the work of your organization. And then they're feeling emotionally connected to outcomes. And now they want to give more. And it's got to start somewhere. So yes, sanctuaries are tough. Okay, sorry. Yes.
I was just going to say a reminder if anyone wants to use the app for questions.
Is it you? I can't remember who had their hand up. No, I think you were first.
My question is if you fund mental services, like if someone is doing a lot of social media for different organizations or they're a graphic designer, do you fund this kind of people?
We definitely fund social media. I think I'd have to look a little bit more specifically if there was one person doing socials for like a bunch of organizations. I'd have to look at what those organizations are and if we're already funding those organizations. So that one is a little bit more of a contextual question for me. So let's say, so we fund, for instance, the SAVE organization. If you were doing graphic design and social media for SAVE, I'd probably say no because we're already giving SAVE a budget for those things. So it would kind of depend on who you're doing it for and whether we're already funding those organizations for those services. We wouldn't want to like double do it, right? If we're like, oh, we've given you this for your social media, and then we're giving this person the same amount for what we've already given the organization. So it would kind of depend. But please feel free to fill out the pre-application, put in a few of those details, and I will so gladly take a peek at that. Does that work? Yeah. Does that kind of make sense though? Yeah. Okay, cool.
Hi. So I'm Nate. I'm a president and co-founder of BESA, a nonprofit organization in Quebec, Montreal. So, right, exactly. So you said you were funding like direct, like specifically vegan missions, but our nonprofit organization doesn't like clearly states a vegan message, but as a strategy to bring on more people on like welfareist achievements and like bring them to a complete abolition of animal exploitation. Would you vegan grants, would that enter in that category?
Yeah, that's always that's a little bit of a tricky question too, which I'm really glad to be getting all these good questions. We are strictly vegan, and I want to try to answer that a couple of different ways. One of them is whether or not the organization uses the V word. I've been vegan since 1987, maybe longer than some of you have been born. A lot of you. It makes me feel maybe you're older than, no, you're not older than me. Makes me feel like super old, but we don't care if you call it plant-based, or again, if I use an Esther the Wonder Pig example, we used to call it the Esther approved diet. So first of all, you don't have to use the V word. We're not fussed about that part. However, we do not fund welfare work. So if the work is sort of the cage-free egg stuff, or if it's the no tail docking for pigs, or the quote unquote better chicken, we don't believe that that is work that is necessarily going to lead to an abolitionist diet. We have some concerns about whether that actually makes people feel better about what they're already eating, right? Oh, I get to now feel better about my bacon and eggs because the pigs could turn around and the chickens were cage free. So that is not work that we fund. We are well aware that it goes on, and we also believe that all forms of activism are important and necessary, but we won't fund that as a stepping stone to something else.
Hi, Krista, thanks. Just first of all, say thank you very much to you and Carl for coming over. And I know there's few people in the room who know just how much the V Grants work has impacted on the UK. There's quite a few groups that wouldn't be here without that support. So thank you very much for all the support you've given. Yeah. And for taking the trouble to come over here and talk to us all, because it's really helpful. And I think it helps unlock some of the mysteries about applying for grants, and it opens it up, encourages people to apply. I've been lucky enough to had a successful application, but I've also had a non-successful application, so I've had both. So my question is that I noticed that you've actually, following on from this question, is that you're focused on veganism, but also very much on food.
Yes.
If you're promoting veganism as sort of justice for all philosophy, how likely is that to be successful in a grant application? Or does it have to be very much specifically focusing on food? So your criteria says food, but veganism and food, is there room? In other words, can you be too vegan? Right. You might be not vegan enough. Can you be too vegan?
Well, I love this. I think if anyone's too vegan, I'm definitely way too vegan. You don't come to my house without knowing that it's a vegan home. I remember my first date with my husband 25 years ago. We've been married a long time now, but first date, and he was not vegan then. He very much is now. And or we wouldn't be married or stay together or any of those things. But I remember saying to him on our first date, I'm vegan, I'm hardcore, there will never be meat, dairy, eggs, leather, blah, 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 ever in my house or any house I will live in. So if you don't want to go on a second date, I'm not your gal. Obviously there was second and third, and 25 years later, he's still hanging around. So can you be too vegan? I don't think you can. But going to your more important question, vegan is obviously a bigger word than food. It is leather, and it is anti-vivisection, and it is the cosmetics we buy, and it is all of those things. And at Vegan Grants, we believe that all of that work is critical. But our focus is specifically around food activism, right? So if you've had a grant denied, maybe, and I'm happy to also chat with you about it, maybe it was because it wasn't specifically food. And I think something else I just wanted to highlight is John Boland's here from the Fauna Foundation, another funder. John, thank you for being here. Every single funder in our movement is different. We all have different philosophies. We all have different missions. We all fund different things. As funders, we are not a monolith. We get along and we chat with each other. John and I text and chat all the time about, hey, what do you think of this? And are you going to fund that? And we do all of that for sure, but not all of us agree on what we fund. And I think the beauty in that is that there are lots of funders who do lots of things. And it sort of means that you as a grantee, as an activist, have to find the funder that you match with, right? You're just not going to, I'll come to you and you're just not going to match with every funder. There are some things that I fund that John doesn't. There's stuff he funds, I don't. It's not right or wrong. It's just there's only so much money in this movement. Let's be honest, right? There is just not a lot of money in this movement. I think the entire global movement is around $250 million. It's like a pittance. Small companies do more than that, So we each have to be conscientious and focused about where our money is going to go. When I deny a grant, it wrecks me inside. I sometimes cry to John. I did today. Like it kills me. I want to say yes to everybody. we can't. I think you, yeah.
I'm producing a documentary on animal testing. So who do you recommend I approach for grants or funding?
First of all, we love documentaries, but not on animal testing. You're right, unfortunately. John, Craigslist, I bet Craigslist might be open to that. Maybe Navigation Fund might be open to that. Who do you think? Yeah, oh yeah. Greenbaum Foundation, Jim Greenbaum loves documentaries. He is like the documentary king. Yeah, we do a lot of, like, we've done Seaspiracy and Cowspiracy. Our most recent was Christspiracy. If you have not seen it, it is free to watch on YouTube, christspiracy.com. Watch it, send it to your friends. Yes. Was Christspiracy? Thank you, John. Who was next? You, and then I think this lady in the orange. Yes.
Hi, I run an animal investigation agency for the last 18 years, and we've been a limited company, and I'm looking now to increase revenue. Do you think I need to transition as a charity or a CIC, or do you actually still invest in or fund limited companies?
Right, great question. It sort of grants and investments. So we do a lot of investments, but our investments are in the plant-based food space, right? As it relates to undercover investigations, we would look at those, provided that it's an NGO, it's a not-for-profit. We wouldn't fund a quote unquote for-profit. And well, yeah, that's a separate topic. And as long as the footage is not being used for welfare reform, right? So if there is an undercover investigation that's being used for requesting cage-free eggs in Denmark, we wouldn't be funding something like that. So, but to say, moving from a limited to an NGO just to get funding, I'd want to think long and hard about that. Oh, it's a tough one. I'm happy to have a sidebar. I did 12 undercover investigations in Canada. I know investigations. I know how hard it is. I did mine were all employment based. I did Delamax and in Quebec, and yeah, orange. My favorite color is orange.
Oh, right. Thank you so much, and thank you, as that gentleman said earlier, for everything you do. Thank you guys. Well, thank all of us. We're all amazing.
Everyone here is heroes. Everyone.
Thank you. It's true. Thank you. I am super excited to be involved in a new project, which is an animal rights choir, which is going to be international with an incredible vegan artist. My question is, there's a few of us involved. The artist herself, Vegan Queen Bee, is individual. I run a CIC, and that's where the money will be filtering through. Right. So my question is, when that money, the grant that we would like is to get this to start, basically, although we're looking at other ways of funding it initially, but a grant would be amazing. And we're working very hard to connect with everybody and that kind of thing. Once that grant's, if we got that grant, the money that then comes in as profit, even though it wouldn't be profit because it's going through a community interest company, does that money have to go directly to a farmed animal project or back into the veganism project? Or can, I don't think I'm asking this very well. Keith, what am I asking? I'm asking, that's my accountant. Yeah, I can ask it. I'm just thinking, do we have to, when we are asking for the grant in the first place, because it's specifying farmed animals and veganism, does any of that money have to go to a specific farmed animal project, I suppose is my question? Or can that money go back into the original project and it just goes up and up and up and up, I suppose is the question. I don't think I asked it very well, but it's because it's an individual and a CIC. Right.
First of all, I love the squirrels on your dress.
Thank you.
So
squirrels are great.
I was like, are those squirrels on her dress? They are. Squirrels and nuts. So this is like the best outfit today for sure. I guess the second thing I want to say is I love the idea of a choir. That is very cool. right? Like I want to join. Cool. Awesome. Right. I love art. I love music. Those are all wonderful forms of activism. I think I'd want to, I mean, look, at the end of the day, we're about funding NGOs, not for profit organizations, whatever the legal entity is in a particular country. There's going to be nuance, whether it's here in the UK or Canada or Denmark or whatever. So I'd want to probably look at it, but right. So what, the money would then, it's not really a profit, right? The money would just be continually within the organization. Right. Yes. I mean, right. So one of the things, right. So we ask for financial statements, right? And learn how to budget. Right. It's so important, like so important. And whenever I look at and I read your budgets, I read your board minutes. So I ask that organizations upload minutes of board meetings for 3 years, unless you're not in existence 3 years. Read your financial statements. And basically, if there is additional money, it goes into the next year. Talk to an accountant. Those kinds of things funders definitely look at. Hey, John? We look at your financial statements. And if the budget and the financial statements don't make sense, we will email you and say, hey, please, this doesn't seem right. So know your money. If it means talking to an accountant or whatever, that is super duper important. And I genuinely read financial statements. Yes. Yeah, learn to budget. There's even tutorials on YouTube on how to do NGO budgeting. And yeah, I totally agree with John. Yeah.
Hi, I'm a UK accountant. I just thought I'd clarify one of the things you said because.
Is your accountant for our UK folks?
So
and there are two accountants. Of course, he's yours.
in the UK, because some of the terminology is different, but if you're a UK limited company, it's incredibly easy to convert to a community interest company. So I think that actually would benefit you from your question that you described. Yeah.
It's like a lovely conversation here. We love our accountants. Accountants rock.
Thank you very much. So I'm Alice. I'm from Rooted Research Collective. I'm the co-founder and chief scientific officer. So we were also already really thankful that we've had a successful application, but it was in collaboration with Freedom Food Alliance. So my question is about the social media following, because as an organization, we don't have a social media following. So we very much rely on Freedom Food Alliance for that side of the project. But so I was just wondering how important is it that social media following belongs to that organization? Would you consider applications that might include in the plan some sort of dissemination through a PR agency or something like that?
I just want to thank you for that question, because there are all sorts of organizations where social media isn't their key communication tool. And we certainly acknowledge that 100%. So if I gave the impression that it was critical for every grant application, then I want to apologize. And again, thank you for allowing me to clarify that. For instance, an undercover investigation organization, I would hope there's no social media, right? So it's again, it depends. And if that is not the right tool for you, then it's not the right tool for you. And it might be, maybe you're communicating with, thank you for coming. Maybe you're communicating with influential people in a different way. So thank you so much. Yes.
Hi, I'm from the Vegan Organic Network. and we're just launching a project going into schools where we're teaching kids about how to grow the food and how it affects the environment, the health, and it's all about how to grow vegan organically. So we will somewhere down the line, probably in September, looking at applying for some grants, and I don't know where the best place to start would be.
That's a great question. I don't know what your thoughts are, John. We don't do a ton around things like gardening. That's really not our space. Again, I think it's something that's really important, particularly for children. But our challenge a little bit is growing vegetables. They can also go home and still have, chicken with their green beans kind of thing. Right. 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 So gardening isn't our space. I know Craigslist does some of that. Um, oh yeah, Akeso. Yeah. Yeah, so Akeso, ACESO, Akeso Foundation, and the person who does like what John and I do, her name is Vera Flock. You're 100% right. They have one of their 3 program areas is gardening. Thank you, John. I'm so glad you're here for many, many reasons. Akeso, ACESO, and her name is Vera, VERA, Flock, FLOCKE. Now, sorry, and that brings up a really good point that I want to make sure I share as well. If you're, for instance, here in the UK or somewhere else, and you're talking to a funder, and that funder is, look, the majority of the big funders are in the United States, right? Some of the big funders can only give to US charitable organizations with what's called 501c3 status. If you talk to a funder who says, I really want to fund you, but we can only give to a 501c3, you can reach out to me and we can do what we call your fiscal sponsor. So they can give us the money and we can give it to you. So if you ever find yourself in that bit of a little pickle and you're like, oh, they really want to give us money, but they only give to 501c3s. We're not a 501c3. You can reach out to me and we are very likely going to be able to help you. We do. Right. We do. Thank you, John. We do it for John. We do it for free. So, you're going to get the full amount of money that the funder wants to give you. And we eat all the admin costs.
And what if that project is for welfare related campaign? Would you still pass it through?
Likely not. It is a bit case by case. But yeah, probably not. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Humane America will take those. Yeah. Okay. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. How about 2? Would 2 be okay with you? 2 from somebody that hasn't asked. Okay, I'm going to get these 2 ladies. I'm so sorry. I want to kind of spread the love, right? You and you.
Would you be interested in supporting an organisation that's thinking of taking legal action against an assurance scheme, food assurance scheme?
Right. Again, that's an area we do not do strategic litigation. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I guess my question would be around what you said earlier about the monthly giving,
Yes.
and that kind of being like so important that it like builds up.
Yes.
We struggle a bit with kind of the shopping list, so kind of saying that this is exactly what it's going to achieve, and struggle to really, even though we know for us it's important to have monthly donations, to bring that value to our donors to say, we need you to donate monthly rather than like a one-off. So I wondered just if there's any experience or any tips, advice you can share at all to make that kind of an appealing case for that?
Yeah. It's so much better when you have people who are giving by the month instead of one off. Because again, you get that they're giving you $5, they just keep giving and hopefully into perpetuity, right? You can write some really nice, fun campaigns around that where you're specifically asking them, you're giving them incentives to do it, you're maybe sending them some fun stickers. Or at Happily Ever Esther, we used to do a lot of fun little things like draws, like, oh, okay, if you give us $5 a month, you're going to get a draw to have a Zoom call with Esther. Or like, there is some really fun, creative things. Something I just thought of you could do? Ask ChatGPT. I'm not, if you are not using AI in your organizations, you are not as effective as you could be. We are going to get to a point at vegan grants where we will be looking that all grantees are in some way. Andrew and I just had lunch and we had that conversation. If you are not somehow using ChatGPT at bare minimum to assist you with your underlying administration, you are 100% missing out on being able to do more work for animals. Ask ChatGPT. I'm sure ChatGPT is a heck of a lot more creative than I am. So thank you all. Again, you are the heroes. Thank you for caring, and thank you for being vegan. Thank you for being here. Let us know how we can help you. And yeah, thank you for everything you are doing for animals. John, thank you for popping in. I super appreciate it. Fauna Foundation. And yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.